From a deep, immaculate kiss, she spread her too ripe, dripping limbs. And then I happened.
I beg your pardon?
And the moon throbbed and fought with an angry sun, all that day and all that night, until it forced me out.
Dinky.
Now I scald here, alone. Touch me with your white words and your dead hands. Now, before I freeze.
That'll be enough.
And become one of you.
Dinky!
You interrupted me.
A modern day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Lay a Kick, a Coen Brothers end up with Timothy Chalamet. A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel, Alvin and the Chipmunks deserve another squeak. There's so many new ways to revisit Sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update. But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters, Rubber Burners, and Rock and Roll Hall of Famers. This is Ruined Childhoods, and on this episode, we are celebrating the cinema of the Buckeye State. This U.S. region is home of heroes Superman, Scooby-Doo, and literal lifesavers, the candy. Other famous Ohio natives are Steven Spielberg, Drew Carey, and LeBron James. But if you're from Clyde, a town that sits between Cleveland and Toledo, you might add Roxy Carmichael to that group, creating the ultimate Mount Ohio more. That's right, we're in Ohio, talking Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael. Dan, who would you consider the most famous person from our neck of the woods back in New Jersey?
Well, John, it really depends on how local you get, because Hoboken, New Jersey is the birthplace of Frank Sinatra, arguably the most famous New Jerseyan. A little farther out, you have Freehold, where Bruce Springsteen, who, if you have been listening, if you listened to our previous episode, you know that I have a great appreciation for Bruce Springsteen.
Correct.
John, not so much. It's in the last episode if you want to hear more about it.
I respect the guy, just not my style of jams.
But we have been down that thunder road, and we are born to run in the other direction today. So I would say, so you've got Frank Sinatra. So you've got the chairman of the board in Hoboken, and then you've got the boss down in Freehold, and then closer to our region, most famous. I mean, Charles Addams created the Addams Family from Westfield, New Jersey. You've also got Ray Liotta from Union, New Jersey, who stars in many wonderful movies, including Goodfellas. So that's also from nearby, like South Orange and Maplewood. You've got the likes of Lauryn Hill and Zach Braff. Not the most famous, but these are also closer to where we are from in Cranford, New Jersey.
That's true. I was thinking, a little bit tighter in. So yes. I wasn't thinking anything like Bruce Springsteen or Frank Sinatra. I feel like Hoboken is just out, is like the next, level of, outside.
It's a different area code.
It's a different area code.
Yeah.
I was thinking along the lines of, Charles Addams for sure. We've talked about Charles Addams from Westfield, New Jersey, creator of the Addams Family. And I think that Charles Addams would potentially be at the top of the list, specifically because the legacy continues to grow and grow and grow.
Oh, it's a global phenomenon that, the legacy continues to grow and grow and grow. We've got that episode in the archives.
Yeah, the other one who I would consider to be at a similar level would be Judy Blume, who's from Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Okay.
And Judy Blume is just, iconic, has been so instrumental in so many people's childhoods. I feel like, with Judy Blume in that neck of the woods and, living in Portland, where Beverly Cleary is from, you kind of just have like the two juggernauts of female-driven children's literature covered. I did write down
The
Ray
Giants,
Liotta, but
yes.
I don't consider him to necessarily be like as beloved. Certainly, we appreciate his talent.
Yeah.
And I intend to bring up another Ray Liotta movie in a little bit, but we'll get to that.
Ray Liotta is not quite on that. All due respect to Ray Liotta, but right, not quite on the level like Charles Adams, the creator of That Legacy, or Judy Blume, who's the legacy just continues to grow and grow because like her books and Beverly Cleary's books just continue to be introduced to generation after generation.
Yeah. The other person that I wanted to add, and it's not somebody whose work I'm necessarily very familiar with, but from what I understand, this person is kind of taking the music world by storm, and that is the recording artist Halsey, who is from, I believe, either Clark or Edison. I've seen a couple of different things, but I know that Halsey is extremely popular and very well respected. And hey, wouldn't you know it, right from our backyard.
And okay, I did not realize. I've heard of Halsey. I am not as familiar with the Halsey repertoire, and I did not realize that she was from maybe from Union County. Edison, I don't think is in Union County.
Our
but
neck
close
of the
enough.
woods, we can say.
The Menlo Park Mall region.
That's one way to put it.
The travelers of Route 22.
That is accurate. That is accurate. So, Garden State Parkway in the 130s, in that region, 130s, 140s. So, we're talking about Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, which I hadn't seen this movie before. This is a bit of a blind spot for me. Is this one that you were familiar with?
I had heard of it, and being a devotee, especially in the early 90s, of the Abrams Zucker films, and just like seeing all of the films that they did, including the films that weren't parodies, the films like Ruthless People, and then in 1990, you've got was David Zucker doing Ghost? Jerry Zucker doing Ghost.
I thought it was David.
And was it David Zucker? All right. Doing Ghost, and then you've got Jim Abrams doing.
Sorry, you're right. Jerry Zucker.
And then you've got Jim Abrams doing Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael. And I remember seeing the ads for it, and I remember seeing his name attached to it, and I remember it just kind of came and went. And I think it might have been one of those, like when Blockbuster would be trying to push like smaller movies and be like, here's a hidden gem. Or however they categorized it. Yeah,
I mean, it's a Winona Ryder movie, and
this was, if I may break in here, this is 1990. So Winona Ryder's 1990 releases included Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, Mermaids. There's another big one that I'm totally blanking on right now because I'm just going off the top of my head. But
what year was Heathers?
Heathers was 89.
89. Okay.
Yeah, Heathers was 89, but she did Edward Scissorhands. Edward Scissorhands was 1990.
Of course.
And she famously dropped out, was supposed to star as Mary Corleone in Godfather Part 3, dropped out of that production, leading to Sofia Coppola infamously taking the role. But no wonder, because this is coming right after 1989. She's got Great Balls of Fire and Heathers.
88,
coming on the heels of Beetlejuice.
This is just like, what a time to be Winona Ryder.
Right. But she's churning them out.
Yeah.
So,
and I gotta say, there's something that I really appreciate about the choices that Winona Ryder made that she didn't have to make. And I've been thinking about this a lot in comparison to kind of like the young stars of today. And I feel like from what I'm seeing, you see a lot of these actors doing like taking these roles, and it's almost like who they are as a person and as a celebrity is part of the roles that they're taking. And so they don't want to come across maybe looking a certain way and maybe taking some of the risks that actors around like the 90s were taking, who were considered to be like heartthrobby actors. You know, in the Brat Pack, of course there's movies like Less Than Zero where they're coming across looking really bad, and as their personal lives are really crumbling as well. Thinking about like Robert Downey Jr. and you do have some actors today. Tom Holland did that movie Cherry where he's a heroin addict with like PTSD, and you do have like a little bit here and there of things like that. But I'm thinking of actors like Austin Butler and Anya Taylor-Joy, who I feel like they care a lot more about the way that they are presenting themselves and don't want to make themselves necessarily look unattractive. Because even Austin Butler in Dune Part 2, even though he's like heavily made up and everything, is still like hunky and muscular.
Right. And there's still like there's this like sci-fi mystique sexiness to him, which I haven't seen the film. I've seen the clips, and so there's definitely that appeal, I guess. So I see what you're saying.
And Winona Ryder is taking a lot of roles where she, this character, Dinky, first of all, her name is Dinky.
Her name is Dinky Bassetti,
And her true self is kind of the like disheveled, wearing all black, dyeing her like yellow sweaters black. And the kind of not real her is the one that we see at the end. And she, her personality is just like this weirdo. And it's
not a far cry from Lydia Dietz.
Not a far cry from Lydia Dietz. Lydia Dietz is like a bit of a more extreme, which is totally fine because that's Beetlejuice and sure.
Right.
I mean, Edward Scissorhands is probably the one where she's meant to look the most like delicate. And that is certainly done intentionally because of the juxtaposition with Johnny Depp. And in Heathers, clearly she's, got this other thing going on inside. And
Heathers is fun because Heathers kind of play, and of course we can't neglect Lucas, where I think that was her first.
I think so,
and even in that she's the quirky character, and she kind of plays with that image again, with Beetlejuice. And then Heathers, it's kind of like they meet because like she's part of the clique, but she's also not into what they're all about. And she's really, she finds herself more into what the JD, Christian Slater's character, is all about.
Yeah. I would also even say that like her role in Mermaids isn't necessarily like 100% turned up to be like, cute teen. She gets involved in a relationship, but like she's still kind of a little fringy.
She's fringy, and she's just kind of, if I remember that movie correctly, she's just kind of like she wants the normal life, but like Cher is her single mom, so she's kind of like has to counterbalance Cher. In that, if I remember that one correctly. That's
right. Yeah. Christina
and then
Ricci
also
as her younger sister.
Right. But then also Great Balls of Fire is another interesting because she's playing who's supposed to be like the typical teenage girl in the mid 1950s in Louisiana, which I don't want to, I'm not going to lean into any stereotypes. I'm going to say that has a very atypical relationship with her. I think was her second cousin or her.
I think it's too close of cousins to not just say cousin.
Right. This is true. Yeah. This is true. Yes. And older, and also like much older,
and she was
like
13.
twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was, I think, twice her age.
Yeah.
I think he was
He
like
was a
26
grown-ass man.
or around. Yes, he was a grown-ass man.
Yeah.
So you've got this very true story based on the book that she wrote, Myra Lewis. And
was it based on a book that she wrote? I didn't know. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, based on her. Yeah, her
Goodness
book.
gracious.
Yeah, indeed. I read it. I read the book actually. When the movie came out, I was interested. I think I read the book before I saw the movie.
Okay.
But yeah, always liked that movie. Definitely uncomfortable subject material, but I thought Dennis Quaid was very good.
You know, on our last episode, we talked a little bit about biopics, and I shared some feelings about the things that I like and dislike about certain biopics. And what the thesis of what I was saying was that, historical figures, people who are being depicted in biopics, the more that we know about them and the way that like they live in their skin, the harder it is, I think, to capture somebody in a biopic. And Jerry Lee Lewis was somebody who was very physical, but also it's not like we are inundated with footage of, I mean, there's plenty of footage of Jerry Lee Lewis performing, but I feel like Dennis Quaid's portrayal of him, from what I understand, like, it felt pretty authentic to it during a time when also it was a little in vogue to be making, music biopics like that, especially like La Bamba, which is another one that I feel like is, I mean, we probably saw less of Richie Valens. And so that made Lou Diamond Phillips' performance work even better, that he was able to bring that person to life for a new audience.
That's a
Not
that's
to
a great point.
relitigate the whole biopic situation episode later.
I agree. We could there's more ground to even be covered in that conversation, but we'll get back there at some point.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, because nobody else is.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. What I really think is cool about Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, and I'll do a synopsis in a second, but you never really see her. Like, you don't even really know too much about, like, necessarily why she's famous. You get like a little bit of information, but not a lot.
And the little bit that you know about her is not flattering.
No.
Like, from the moment you're introduced to this character, I, for one, was not like sympathetic to this person's decisions. And as we'll get, it sounds like as we're going to get into, that is one of the things that I liked about this film as well was the mystery surrounding her, and the fact that, okay, well, there's something we don't know. What don't we know? What aren't we hearing? And but I think the synopsis will make all of that make more sense.
This is a really brief one, and then we'll get a little bit more into that. Around 15 years after Hollywood sensation Roxy Carmichael left her small Ohio town, she's finally returning to cut the ribbon at a building being named in her honor. The entire town of Clyde is going bananas, especially two residents. Denton, the boyfriend she left behind, and Dinky, the teenage outcast who is certain that Roxy is her biological mother. That's what I got.
Yes.
And Dinky is played by Winona Ryder. Jeff Daniels plays Denton. And that's pretty much all we really need to know. I also just want to give a shout out to Thomas Wilson Brown, who plays Gerald, who is a boy who has feelings for Dinky and is kind of the only, I guess, peer who kind of sees her for who she is. There's also like the school guidance counselor, who I'm blanking on her name, but
Layla Robbins plays her,
and she's great. And that was a really good character. Playing her parents are Graham Beckel and Frances Fisher. By parents, I mean adoptive parents.
Right.
Her adoptive mother, whom like just wants to get Dinky out of the way, but her adoptive father clearly like cares for her and, wants what's best for her and sees her as a real daughter. Like,
there's a nice progression there.
Yeah.
Really nice progression there.
You know what it made me think of? I on like social media, I see a lot of videos of people who are at, protesting abortions or abortion clinics, or maybe there's some sort of ruling or bill being passed or something on a state level, and there are people who are protesting, and you have somebody who's there kind of interviewing them, and there's people who have like, choose adoption, and then it's like, oh, how many kids have you adopted? And they're just like, oh, I haven't adopted any. I have 2 of my own. And then the other ones are just saying like, I have kids of my own. And it's just like, adopted kids are kids of your own too.
Right. They are. That's exactly what they are. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for anybody watching on YouTube, I've got a dog right behind me. This is my biological son. This is my boy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Rufio is my flesh and blood. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care, what the adoption papers say. It's my boy. That's American son.
It's your own son.
Yeah.
It's your own son. Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's something like, that's terminology that I feel like I got corrected on that at an early age at some point, like referring to like, a friend who had an adopted sibling as their parents, like quote unquote real kid. And I'm pretty sure I was set straight by like, I think if I remember correctly, I was having that conversation with one or both of our parents and was corrected on that, rightfully so. And
our parents corrected you on that? Oh, cool.
Yes. Credit where credit is due.
Hey, absolutely. We will celebrate them whenever we can.
Right. So like just learning to use terminology, biological, if necessary, if it's even necessary to make that distinction, which it so frequently is not. So anyway, so yes, but it's kind of, but that I feel like it's not really much of a question in this.
What is not much of a question?
Well, I'm saying like just the circumstances around Dinky's like adoption. We don't really go into that much.
No, all we know is that she is adopted. She is not close with her parents. And that seems to be pretty much by design by her mom and her dad. And it seems like as the movie goes along, he sees her in a different way, because as the movie's progressing, one of the, like the C or D storyline essentially is that her mom is trying to get her sent away to like a boarding school, so she doesn't have to deal with her.
Again, very similar to the Dietz family dynamic.
Oh yeah,
where you have, I mean, in this case, you have Delia as the stepmother, but who is definitely looking to kind of get Lydia out of the way. Yeah, and Charles, who is more understanding and looking more sympathetic, right, to his child. So you have that similar dynamic here.
Until he wants to exploit her for his own business gain.
Yes, but Maxie Dean,
It's Maxie Dean.
It's maybe Maxie Dean
just
will
real
be back
quick, I am looking forward to the Beetlejuice sequel, and I love that it's called Beetlejuice. Yes, I think that's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed. It sounds like I am with cautious optimism moving forward on that one.
It's got Justin Theroux. I'm glad for that, because we either have lost certain actors to death or to being called out on bad behavior, disgustingly bad behavior.
Yes.
So to replace them with people like Justin Theroux, And I know there's some other good names that I'm seeing popped up in there. So I'm excited about it. Back to Roxy Carmichael.
Back to Roxy Carmichael. So, we've got some, and by the way, shout out to Melissa Etheridge, who we hear quite a bit of Melissa Etheridge throughout the film. And it's always nice because this was before. I mean, I know like Melissa Etheridge was like a well-known singer-songwriter.
Majorly like radio popular.
It was before the Yes I Am album, which was the one that
to my window.
Am I the only one who? Yeah,
and you know what? That album slaps.
It does.
It's so good.
I remember like you couldn't turn on the radio without hearing like one of the hits off that album. So anyway, getting back to Roxy Carmichael. So the other crazy thing about this,
to Roxy Carmichael, this should be the sequel's name.
That's the sequel. That's the sequel. Yes, it's about us trying to record a podcast about Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael. So the screenwriter, and I had her name up in front of me, and then lost the tab.
Karen Lee Hopkins.
Thank you. Karen Lee Hopkins is from Sandusky, Ohio. So, and from what I read, it is basing some of this on her, just like her own observations of her hometown, which is why I like that we covered this for Ohio, because I feel like it gives that view, and it's kind of like it's a story type. It's an archetype where you have the, whatever the prodigal blank returns, the, hometown boy or girl makes good and comes back, kind of similar to in and out, but Right. Just like that basic sense of like that was the person, like no, there would be no debate about it. That's the most famous person to come from that area. That's what everyone would say. And same thing with Roxy Carmichael. And it's more about the mystique of celebrity and about how it gives all of these people something new to talk about, someone excitement to talk about. Right. There's some excitement going on, and it like invigorates people. You definitely The town gets horny.
Stephen Tobolowsky really comes to life.
Yes, absolutely. So it's an interesting movie, and it includes just these little glimpses into the lives of the characters, hints at possible relationships, like the Dinah Manoff character and the other woman whose name I forget.
Is this the one woman who's clearly gay and the other one who's maybe closeted and like obsessed with Roxy Carmichael? Like there's
who was Roxy Carmichael's best friend, right?
But clearly in love with her.
And like perhaps more than that. So but who knows? It was just
I liked that storyline, and I also liked how, when there's something that goes on between them, it's not done in like a salacious way or a shameful way.
No.
Yeah. They sit down to a nice, fruit display breakfast.
Right. And it's just kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what's happening there. And
they're all trying to figure out like how they fit into a life of somebody who's larger than life.
Right.
And, going back to what we were saying before about Roxy Carmichael and why she's famous, is like she's one of those people who, are way too common now. It's the people who are famous just for being famous. She's kind of like she shoehorned her way into like being a Kardashian or something. And
and she's an influencer.
I was thinking that she's kind of like an influencer mixed with somebody like Angeline, the iconic Los Angeles billboard. Are you familiar with Angeline? She makes an appearance in Earth Girls Are Easy at like the gas station, but she's a person. She's like obsessed with like Barbie and everything, and she drives around in a pink Corvette everywhere, and her license plate is Angeline, and I think that she like married some like wealthy attorney, and he has been paying for her to like have a billboard just that says Angeline on it, and it's essentially just like manufacturing celebrity just through getting in people's heads as they drive through Los Angeles. And
this person's a celebrity.
Yeah. And I believe there's a documentary about her. And I've read plenty of articles, but I feel like the more you learn about her, the less interesting, like, I don't know, the less fun it is. And the more it's just like, and I feel like that's kind of the way with Roxy Carmichael, where it's just like, when we just know her as the celebrity, it's fun. But when we just learn more about her, it's just like, she kind of sucks. I mean, like, she abandons her baby, with the baby's father, who's Denton, but like, she's not a savory character, but
no,
everybody looks to her as being this icon. It's a really interesting dynamic that they set up.
It is. And it gets to the point where I appreciate the reason that she's famous because of this, like, wait, what, why is this person such a big deal? It's like, that's all we've got going on here?
Yeah. I don't know.
But the demystification of Roxy Carmichael is kind of what needs to happen for Dinky Bassetti to accept who she is.
Well, it's less the demystification, and this is going into spoiler territory.
Spoiler alert.
So when she learns that she can't be Roxy's daughter because Roxy's daughter died in infancy, that's what really, rattles it for her.
Well,
but
yeah.
Something, and this is still in spoiler territory. If you skip a little bit further, unless you've seen the movie or don't care about it being spoiled. But at the end, when the limo drives up and it's just a note in a suitcase that says Roxy can't make it and is sorry. And that's kind of like, if Roxy did show up, then she'd probably it probably wouldn't be very exciting. She'd probably let down a lot of people because she isn't famous for anything good. She's just famous. And she'd have to like talk to people and answer questions. You don't see her interact with people during the movie. She's by herself. She's living a life of solitude in this, estate in Los Angeles. And there, what you think about it, it's like, how glamorous really is that?
No, it's nothing. And she's kind of nothing.
Yeah. She's very much nothing. She's all hype.
Yeah. So it's a very clever and creative movie in that way, and it kind of spins that little genre on its head a bit, because usually the person is somebody, in and out. It's the Matt Dillon character who becomes a famous actor and wins an Academy Award.
Yeah, he's rightfully acclaimed. There's good reason behind it.
Yeah. And
that movie's so good. I just love it.
It's a wonderful movie.
Yeah.
And what this movie does well, though, is it takes that, it's commenting on that, what do people who live in these small towns, like, what do they need? Like, does every small town need its Roxy Carmichael? Yeah. And if they don't have one, like, do they create one?
No, that's a good point. Maybe they just needed it. I mean, they turn her like childhood home into a shrine, to a museum where everything is left intact. Site. And it's bizarre. It's just really uncomfortable. And one thing that we haven't talked about yet is the Jeff Daniels character, Denton, which is another like really fascinating character. He's like a landscaper or something, but he's married with kids, but is still hung up on this part of his life that he has zero closure on. And
Yep.
Roxy coming to town and his wife, spoiler alert, leaving with the kids because he can't get over Roxy Carmichael is what gives him the impetus to like move past it. And when she doesn't show, it's, his way of being able to, it is his way of getting closure, because it's just like, this is really the real person that she is, somebody who's not going to show up.
He says it. I'm never going to see you again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very definitively at that moment.
Yeah. And I really like the way that he and Dinky kind of interact a little bit. And to him, she's just a kid who lives in the town. But, for her, he is potentially her father. And, which she, I think, kind of learns along the way, but it's like less important about that than like Roxy being her mother.
Right.
But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, which I alluded to when we mentioned Ray Liotta, is how, this kind of time period for Jeff Daniels, I really like a lot of the moves that he's making. And I'm thinking specifically of Something Wild, which also stars Ray Liotta in a chilling role. And I feel like clearly Jeff Daniels has had like a really awesome career. He's gone on to do some like very serious and real things, also Dumb and Dumber. And we've seen like a lot of what he can do and how much fun he can have with roles. I feel like Something Wild is a really cool one though, because it's showing this person who is buttoned up and them finding themselves in a way to like kind of be more free. And what year was Something Wild? Because that
86.
I would say that was a few years before this one. And
this year you've got Jeff Daniels does Arachnophobia.
That's right. I forgot he's in Arachnophobia. I only remember John Goodman in Arachnophobia.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because he's got a standout performance, but
right. Yeah, he's featured in the trailers is John Goodman. About equally to Jeff Daniels, if not more. But Arachnophobia, which I heard they're remaking that.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, bound to happen eventually, but it's that's a fun movie, fun little summer 1990 movie. But Jeff Daniels, around this time he
did Radio Days in 87. Also in 90 is Love Hurts. After that, he does, I guess, Gettysburg is in 93. He's in Speed in 94 and Dumb and Dumber.
Right.
Oh, in 86, he also does Heartburn, which I love. That's a great movie.
Oh, yeah. I forgot he was in that.
Yeah. Terms of Endearment in 83 was his second movie.
Right.
Wow.
Right. I remember that. I think his character name in that is Flap.
It is Flap Horton.
Yes.
I feel like that name would have been very appropriate when we were doing, I forget what movie it was, whatever Matthew McConaughey movie we were doing. I was quizzing you on trying to match the Matthew McConaughey names with the movies. Because, it was probably during Mud, when we did Mud, our Arkansas episode. Because some of his character names they're like Flop Horton, essentially. It's
right.
like, what are these names?
Flop Horton. Jeff Daniels.
And he was great in this role. He was kind of the perfect person to be in this role.
Agreed. He's just fits right in there. He's great at being that guy. Also got to shout out Pleasantville, a favorite Jeff Daniels role and just a movie that I really like.
It's a solid movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then, is it anything else?
Is it moving on time?
Is it moving on? Yeah.
I mentioned him. One other person I wanted to shout out is Robbie Kiger, who is the friend of Gerald. I forget his name. It's like Bobby or Billy or something like that. But we would remember him from the Monster Squad.
Okay.
Were you trying
all
to
right.
place him the whole time?
I was, and I didn't bother to IMDb, and I just kept going back to Big, and I was like,
I know.
he looks like the
He
kid from
does.
Big, but
He
he's
does.
not the kid from Big.
Correct. No, he looks a
Okay.
lot like him. Not him. He is from Monster Squad. And you know
Nice.
which one I'm talking about. I
Yeah.
forget
Oh,
the name of the character. It's not Rudy.
Sean.
It's not
Sean.
Is it Sean?
Sean.
Okay.
Sean. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So also just to talk a little bit more about the Thomas Wilson Brown character, Gerald. What if I love the whole like the braces thing? You know, he's the son of the way that Dinky kind of messes with him. And and he's just like, well, I'm gonna grow up and I'm gonna be a dentist. And she's like, isn't your dad a dentist? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, is he your dentist? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, well, don't go to school where he went to school because he's a bad dentist. Look at your teeth. And it's such a great way to show her personality and the way that this character Gerald, like, you know, she's somebody who doesn't care what people think about her and doesn't try to like get people to like her. And that aspect of her is what Gerald really likes. And he's like the only peer of hers, the only kid her age who like sees beyond her, you know, her attitude and kind of sees where it's coming from. And when Robbie Kiger's character at the end is just like, do you get braces? And he's like, yeah. And he's just like, I've got gaps, which is what she like points out to him. And he's just like, you look ugly. And he's just like, I know. It's so good.
It's great because, and his character needs that because his character also has that awful moment where he tells Dinky, like, you need to start making yourself look prettier so you could be my girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, and he has a really interesting arc where he's like, you know, kind of a cool guy in school. And she kind of just like messes with him in such fascinating ways that he like, you can see him deciding to like change the way that he is. Right. And he becomes like really into her. And I mean,
she's interesting. She's
the only interesting person in town.
We haven't talked about her arc, her boat with her animals.
Oh, that's right. That's right. She, I forget we haven't talked about that.
He helps her fix. Yeah, no, we haven't talked at all. Yeah, by the way, Dinky spends a lot of time down by this riverbank, very, you know, reminiscent of mud. This little like boat, and she has this little collection, little petting zoo.
She would have gotten along with Neckbone.
Oh,
is his name Neckbone?
Was that Neckbone?
Something like that. Yeah, she's got this like boat that she's working on, and all of these, you know, rejected animals. There's like a couple dogs, a goat, like there's all sorts of these animals that like nobody wants, that she's just, and you know, as somebody who was adopted, you know, in her eyes, abandoned as a child, and and she wants to be a better, you know, adoptive parent than her parents are to her. Yeah. And she wants to like take all of these like, you know, rejects and, you know, sail away with them and go someplace better. And it would have been nicer, I think, if there was, I don't know, something more to that. I mean, there was a lot that went into that. You know, the school guidance counselor, when Dinky is just like, oh, well, my biological mom's coming and I'm going to go off with her. Can you take care of this boat situation and take care of all these animals? Like, right. You know, there's a little bit of that where it's just like, are you as empathetic to these animals as you think that you are or that you want to be? Because the idea of reconnecting with your biological mother is like more enticing to you and more of a reality in your mind at this point. So there's more there than I think that we necessarily get the impression that there is.
Right. Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. Yeah. I do think this is a movie that in a lot of ways kind of scratches a lot of surfaces.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, it's a really fascinating movie. I mean, clearly, you know, with Abrams directing it, having come from the movies like Top Secret and Airplane and stuff like that, you certainly expect something a little bit different. That is to say, of course, at this time we do have like one of his buddies making Ghost, so
Right.
you know, they're kind of making these interesting decisions around this time, and it's almost like Abrams is kind of having a hard time trying to decide what kind of movie he's making. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there are those moments where there are like those little flashes of the kind of wackier humor.
Yeah.
Maybe not wacky, but like where it gets a little like the visual of Roxy Carmichael's house
Yeah.
set amongst the other houses, which also looks a bit Edward Scissorhandsy. But
You mean the house is in Clyde?
yes,
Yeah.
where you see Roxy's house, but like with the big sign on the yard, and
Sure.
it really stands out. It feels like one of those like a Abrams Zucker like shot composition.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, the three of them just did an interview on the podcast Bullseye. It's an NPR podcast hosted by Jesse Thorne, and I've been meaning to give it a listen, but it sounds, from what I've heard about it, it sounds like they tell some pretty fun stories that I've never heard before. So,
Oh, great.
you know that those guys are just full of amazing, hilarious stories.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah. All right, Dan, the matter at hand, Roxy Carmichael. What are we going to do? Coming back to Roxy Carmichael?
I think it would make a wonderful musical.
Okay.
I think this is when we talk about how we're only scratching the surface of certain things. I think that's where a musical can dive into a character's psyche and allow them to explore their thoughts and feelings in a way that they can't in just a straight up narrative. And I feel like when you have a story and when you have a character like Dinky and you have a story like this, it sets itself up nicely for to be a musical.
Mm-hmm.
And you could, have it be with Melissa Etheridge songs or not. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But it sounds like I think it would be a really, really interesting musical, and it sounds like it would fit in alongside other shows, kind of like Next to Normal, and there are a few others that I'm not as familiar with. But Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael. And it's not like people need to be familiar with the movie.
Uh-huh.
I think it's something
good luck finding people who are very familiar with it.
True. Yes. So I think it could find a whole new life, and maybe not find an audience for the movie, but at least find an audience for the story.
Right on. Yeah.
That's it. That's my plan.
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah. What's yours?
What's mine?
What do you got?
I wouldn't mind, and I know that like nobody's asking for this, but that's kind of like every episode we talk about is that kind of a thing. But I think that it would be interesting to either see, so I've got kind of two different ways of coming at this. Something from Roxy's side of things, where you are kind of seeing the cracks start to form in the walls, and kind of the side of the person who is expected to make their triumphant return to their hometown, who is under this idea that she has gone on to fame and fortune, but in reality, she's not what she appears to be, and the success she has come at like great costs, or the notoriety that people think that she has. And I don't think that this is something that could necessarily be done in like present day, because we all are able to access so much instantly and know so much right away. So I think that doing something that either would be like 1990 or before could be interesting. Whereas whether it is Roxy Carmichael or it's a story about somebody else who, left their hometown to make it big, and perhaps has like tricked their entire hometown into thinking that they are way more important than they actually are. That I think is very interesting, and having to kind of fulfill this lie and create this mythology in order to, get the town to think that they have this celebrity.
Yeah, and the longer it goes on, the more you have to keep it going, and what's the cost of that?
Totally.
What do you start believing? Yeah, that sounds interesting. I'd be interested in seeing that from Roxy's perspective.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see kind of like Roxy's, like the Roxy story from the time she leaves and I somehow meets this rock star, Jack Slater, not to be confused with the Last Action Hero. That would be a big mistake. But
my God.
Yeah, no, because she's the girl Roxy in that Jack Slater song. What?
Right. I forgot that was the name of the guy. Yeah. Yeah, she's famous because she's mentioned in a song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and she's rich because he signed away all the royalties of the song to her.
Yeah.
So that's how she can afford to have a life where all she does every day is swim a lap in the pool. Not laps. Yeah. A lap.
A lap. Just dive in, emerge, and towel off.
That's what you do in Hollywood. That's what you got.
Hey, you know what?
And
if that's what she's doing to have that rockin' bod, then good for her. If that's all it takes,
absolutely. Go for it. Go for it, Roxy.
For all of you out there listening in podcast land who love Welcome Home Roxy Carmichael and have ideas for how it could be brought back in any form, you come up with something weird, email us. ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. I was about to say greatideapod@gmail.com. That's one of my other things about having a great idea. Which, by the way, we're doing more episodes of that lately. So check out my podcast. I have a great idea. But yes, email us. Check out ruinchildhoodspod.com. Feel free to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you'd like. If you leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and you email us, ruinchildhoodspot@gmail.com, letting us know that it was you, I will gift you with a lifetime premium subscription to The Walt, which is a Substack discussion forum for documentary films. This month's film is Origin Story, featuring the incredible Kulap Vilaysack, who people might know from the Add to Cart pod, or the Who Charted podcast. Also has been an actor in a lot of amazing TV shows and some movies. Really incredible person who made this film about her journey to discover her backstory. This is somebody who has had, much like Dinky, a complicated relationship with her family and is trying to find out the truth. And so check out thewalt.substack.com to learn more about that, and subscribe for free. There's a premium subscription, gets you a little bit more. And so that's what's going on with that. Dan, do you want to tell everybody what we're going to be doing on our Oklahoma episode?
I do. And yes, we will not be covering the musical Oklahoma. Rather, we will be looking at the 1987 vampire thriller Near Dark, directed by Catherine Bigelow, starring Adrian Pasdar, Lance Henriksen, and Bill Paxton. Have you ever seen Near Dark before, John?
Ask me tomorrow.
Oh, all right.
Because I'm going to watch it as soon as I can.
Sounds good. Well, enjoy. I look forward to talking about it. Always love digging into some old vampire lore here. Yeah. So we're looking forward to
what year was Near Dark?
87.
87. Okay, so we're dipping back a few years from Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, and we all, if you've listened to this podcast before, the cinema of 1987 is a special year, especially for us. We talk about a lot of movies from 87 on this podcast. So,
and keep discovering more and more gems from that year.
Totally. Well, Dan, as you are being driven in a limo inside of a tiny little suitcase, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.